Now we're recording. Okay. So in that chapter, we're talking about the verse, all those who know your name will trust in you because you have not forsaken those who seek you, Hashem. So we talked about the idea of Hashem's name. And we went into this concept of knowing Hashem, and we talked about the fact that even in the gate of trust, we learn at the end that one of the three impediments to trust, one of the things that and one of the three troubleshooting tips that he gives us in chapter 7 is, look, you could get messed up with this whole bitachon work if you don't really know the greatness of Hashem. If you don't remember those 7 attributes that Hashem has and how great he is and how he's the cause of all causes, and he's kind and he's attentive and he's responsible and he's close to you, and he's extremely generous, whether you deserve it or don't deserve it. All of those things, if you don't know about Hashem, then you might fail in your bitachon, right? So and we talked about the fact that there's continuous creation, that Hashem is constantly creating, recreating the world. And when we meditate on that, of course, we have this feeling of love and awe and closeness to Hashem, because we realize that he's constantly recreating me, right? He's giving everything life, and he's the only independent existence, right? I hope everybody remembers that we discussed this last week. We have a full house today. Wow, this is amazing. And Hashem is the only independent existence, and nothing else exists. Everything else they don't exist on their own. They depend on Hashem, right? And we talked about the way we create, and we gave the example of my daughter's biscotti that were sitting in the kitchen, and right before class I was able to grab one, but my daughter who made the biscotti is not there anymore. They're separate from the creator, who is my daughter, who baked the biscotti, but Hashem is not separate from his creation, right? Everything is Hashem, because if Hashem stops creating it, it would go back to nothingness, right? It would disappear. It would cease to exist. So all of this is where we left off last week, and we gave the story of this beautiful woman from Chicago on the journey to Eretz Israel. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now, I opened the Hasidische Derher after class on Friday, or I can't remember, maybe Shabbos, I can't remember, okay? So I'm a big fan of the Hasidische Derher. Anybody who doesn't receive it, you should. And they published an incredible article on chapter Mem Aleph of Tanya, Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41 of Tanya. And when I read it, it's not that I hadn't learned Perek Mem Aleph, it's not that I hadn't read it several times, but it almost like I never really got how much of it impacts our bitachon. And I was like, oh, we have to talk about this. So I'm going to go through what they taught here in the article, and we're going to learn inside the chapter, and we're going to start understanding how the message of this chapter is really something that helps us with our bitachon. Okay, so if we to tell you guys a little bit of the background, this chapter of Tanya, and Tanya is the work of the Alter Rebbe, like the seminal work of Chabad Hasidus, and specifically this chapter is about fear of Hashem. And you could be like, well, fear of Hashem, like, you know, what? Okay, so it teaches me to fear Hashem, to have awe of Hashem. What we're going to do is understand this concept and understand what the Alter Rebbe is trying to tell us in chapter 41, and also understand the Lubavitcher Rebbe's view, why he wanted that people should really master this chapter, to the point that he said to many people, memorize it, know it by heart, recite it before you pray in the morning, and it's going to help you. It's going to help you, bring you to a place of bitachon, of a place of tranquility. It's going to bring you to that place of equilibrium. And I was like, whoa, we gotta learn this. We're gonna learn this inside. So I'm going to go inside the article, and we'll discuss what it says in Perek Mem Aleph. So here it's telling us that obviously we live in a physical world. We all know that, right? And we deal with all the struggles of physicality. And Hashem created a world that is Helem, that is concealed, where the Elokus, the godliness is not easily apparent, right? And all through our work in this world, we're trying to reveal that. But there's distractions. We get distracted, right? There's a lot of distractions. So what can we do to What can we do to bring ourselves back to that consciousness of Hashem and keep our focus and stay the course and stay clinging to Hashem all through our work in this world, right? Because we're in this material world, but we know we need Hashem as a partner, right? Otherwise, we're going to be a basket case the whole time. And we want to be reliant on Hashem because that's exactly how all the brachas come. So it's a two-part situation. Not only are we going to be emotionally much better, but it's going to yield an incredible amount of bounty and benefit for our lives, right? So Jewish mysticism, Hasidus, and particularly the Rebbe, try to present things and illuminate things in our lives in a way that we can recognize the light. We can recognize the godliness. We can recognize even within ourselves and human beings, all the spiritual capabilities that we have. And it tells us in the Tanya, those of you who may have heard this who are familiar, may have heard this many times, but that every one of us who are here in this room, who are learning and studying, every yid has a piece of God that is mamash a piece of Hashem. It's a chelek Eloka mimal, but not just that it's a chelek Eloka. It's not just a portion of Hashem, but it's mamash. It really says the Alter Rebbe, it's really a piece of Hashem, right? That we are a part of Hashem in the most literal sense of the word. And so the Rabbeim elaborated in this idea, and they really helped us understand this. And basically, it boils down to one idea, which is we have to recognize who we are, who we truly are, because a person can get very despondent, right? There's so many distractions, and there doesn't seem to be good or light anywhere, and you get very despondent. And we talked about negative character traits last week and how to get, like we all have to get rid of these negative characters, and we talked about all that. And now we're going to address all that. So a person can go through life and be really, really despondent about the state of the world, their own state of character development, or etc. Or you can actually identify with your core essential self, which is a chelek Eloka mimal mamash, and with that core essential self of everybody else around you and everything around you, right? And then when you do that, you're literally focused on the light and the good, and you're also focused on what do I need to do to be true to that light, right? In other words, what do I have to be doing to be fulfilling my mission in the world, in this world, to really maximize the opportunity that I've been given by being sent here by my Creator, right? So it's a tremendous sense of empowerment. It's a tremendous sense of responsibility. And it's really very interesting because very recently, there's two approaches to look to Judaism, okay? And they're all MS. Torah is true. There's nothing, they're just two approaches where the focus is in two different things, but they all lead to the one truth, which is we have a master who's Hashem, our creator, and we're here to serve him and do good in his world, etc. But there's two ways to go about this direction, okay? There's what we call a Musar approach, and then there's the Hasidic approach, Hasidus. And people often ask me, well, what's the difference? The difference is like this. This is a mashal, an analogy that was given by the Rebbe, and that my kids they love it because it's very visual. So let's say it like this: there are two ways that a person who's wearing a coat. Imagine I was wearing a jacket right now, right? Now it's very hot in Houston, but let's say I'm in the winter and I'm wearing a jacket. There are two ways that I could get rid of the jacket. What would be two ways? Well, there could be a very heavy wind, a very, very, very heavy wind. Actually, we had something similar, a very heavy wind recently in Houston, it was like crazy. Could be a very heavy wind that blows the jacket off. That's one way that the jacket could come off me if I want, right? I could get rid of it because the wind comes and blows it off. Or there could be a very bright sun that makes me want to go, let me take it off. So what's the nimshal? What's the analogy saying? When we have character traits that we need to work on, right? In order to serve Hashem and do good in this world, there are things that we're like, something, I have to get rid of this, right? How do I get rid of it? You can blow at a person, right? And you want to knock them over the head, right? And okay, fine. So that's how fine. It'll come off. Like if you pound really, really hard, it'll come off. If you blow that wind really hard, it'll eventually come off. Or another approach to get there is you just shine a light so bright that they themselves will get rid of the stuff. Okay, so that's a difference between the two approaches. Okay, so um, so this is all background information for us to kind of understand the entire approach of the Tanya, which we're going to learn one piece of chapter 41. Okay, so that's the approach is we're shining a light. We're shining a bright light that we're focusing on that light to the point that we feel like, you know what? Of course I want to serve Hashem. Like Hashem is so great. Hashem is so great. How could I, like, after learning all this, how could I not want to be close to him, right? Or I could tell a person, well, look what could happen to you. Okay. Maybe I'll start working on it. Well, it's so no, or you could just do it because it's of course, like it's just so obvious. I'm gonna take off the coat. I wanna, right? Okay, so that's the approach. So here what we're doing is we're learning about Hashem in this class the whole time, right? We're learning about this incredible creator that we're like, we want to have a relationship. And that's exactly what bitachon is about. Bitachon is about the relationship, right? Tach, cement, like yeso in Espanol, in Spanish, right? Is inside the word bitachon because it alludes to the solidification, the cementing of the two entities, me and Hashem, right? I'm in a relationship with my creator, right? And this is a loving, caring relationship. So up until now, we're like, oh yeah, okay, fine. So it sounds like my relationship should be coming from a place of love. And in fact, chapter 41 of Tanya is all about awe of Hashem or fear of Hashem and love of Hashem. And the way he's going to start the chapter, he's going to tell us, well, actually, let's talk about fear first, which is very, very interesting because you would think that Chabad Hasidus is going to talk about love first. And in fact, preceding this chapter, all the chapters from 38 to 40 are all really talking about doing the mitzvot with intention and from a place of love. And all of a sudden, the Alter Rebbe takes us to a very interesting idea, which is fear. And so what is this idea of awe or fear, and how can it bring this joy, which is real bitachon, meaning this simcha and being in the relationship? So that's what we're going to learn inside. And like I told you before, the Rebbe really wanted people to really identify with the light in the world, their essential light and the light in the world and the light of Hashem, and wanting to come close to that light and close to fulfilling that mission. And at every opportunity, the focus was on that positivity and trying to ingrain in people's hearts this idea of the relationship and coming at the relationship because you're in awe and you're in love. Okay, so the Rebbe really encouraged people to learn this, and here the article says that the Rebbe saw learning this chapter of Tanya, chapter 41, as a remedy to a lot of issues arising in everyday life. For example, depression, anxiety, self-doubt, hopelessness, anger, haughtiness, negative thoughts, laziness, unease of the mind, irrational fears, and more. And when you read the list, you're like, oh, all the things that bitachon addresses. So I'm like, oh my gosh, so the content of this piece of Tanya must be part of it. It must be something that strengthens bitachon, because we know that when we have bitachon, all of these things disappear. And this is exactly what the Rebbe is trying to achieve for us by us learning this parak, this chapter. And then on the positive side, the Rebbe advised people to study parak Mem Aleph, chapter 41, as a means to attain success in Torah study, self-control, discipline, true bitachon, spiritual cleansing of the body, simcha, praying properly, teshuvah, and much more. So he really found this very, very, very instrumental knowing this chapter. Okay, so and it says here an essential pillar of a Jew's life and guiding light. So let's see what else it says here. Okay, let me see if there's anything before we go inside the text that I didn't tell you. Okay, so look at this. In a sense, this chapter 41 that we're about to read inside, and if anybody has a Tanya and wants to open it, please go ahead. This is the time to go look for your Tanya and open it, okay? like I was suggesting before, there's a bit of a caveat here because of the way that Tanya has been structured up till we get to the point of chapter 41. Now there's a bit of a caveat because it's the Perek Mem Aleph is going to come and say, you know what? Um, although love of Hashem is so important, it turns out fear of Hashem takes precedence, because the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us that in serving Hashem, fear is actually the first step and the most important element, and that it's going to be actually the root of service of Hashem. So what is this fear, and what does it actually mean, and how can fear be empowering? Because one would think that fear is something that is crippling, and we're going to learn it's exactly the opposite. Okay. Look, they said it here. They said one might think that yira, fear, should make a person feel fear and trepidation. And here we're going to say, no, it actually is not going to be fear and trepidation, but you're actually going to feel like the light is shining and you want to come closer. Okay. Because Hasidus gives it that paradigm shift, allowing us to think, us to see things from another vantage point, where, yes, it's true that in a sense, the fear is telling a person, look, there is an eye that sees and an ear that hears, but that means, yes, you're accountable for every thought, every speech, and every action, every behavior. Hashem is always standing over us, watching what we're doing 100%. But that doesn't mean like this. It actually means the fact that Hashem is close to me, is watching, is always there, is always recreating me and the world around me, means that whatever I do matters, right? So fear really leads me to this empowering place of, there are consequences, and the consequences have cosmic impact. They matter to the creator of the world, right? It means that Hashem, who's creating and leading an infinite amount of spiritual and physical worlds, right? This is not the only world, still actually takes interest in little me right here, in each and every one of us, specifically to the minutest detail, right? And wants to see us succeed. He wants to see us do the right thing, right? He's here cheering us along. So this idea of awe, this idea of fear is, right? Oh my gosh, well, there's a creator and he sees everything and he knows everything. It's actually not, oh, it's actually, wow, he cares. It matters. It's important. It's meaningful. It has consequence. You know, we're in an epidemic of lack of meaning, right? That's really the people say we're in a mental health crisis, but we're in a spiritual health crisis where people don't have meaning on purpose. They haven't been raised with the understanding that their actions matter in this world and are of consequence. They've been raised to think that they are here to serve every single one of their needs. That's what they're here. And so we have a generation and a crisis because people are completely self-involved and self-centered. They have no mission and purpose. They can't see beyond themselves, right? And this is obviously essential in Judaism. No. You're here as a child of God. You matter to the Creator. Everything that you do has has important consequence and significance, okay? So now let's look at it inside, chapter 41, okay? And so the Alter Rebbe begins. One must, however, constantly bear in mind what is the beginning of divine service as well as its core and root. And it's so interesting because if you guys remember, Shar Bitachon is the fourth gate of the Chovos HaLevavos. And the way the introduction of the Shar Bitachon begins is, what I'm about to teach you is the most important thing you need to do in order to be a servant of Hashem, which I already talked to you about in the gate number 3, in the previous gate. So the previous gate of the gate of trust is the gate of service of Hashem. And then when he starts the fourth gate that follows it, he says, if you want to be that servant that I taught you to be, the number one thing you need to have is reliance. You can't serve your master properly if you don't rely on him. And here the Alter Rebbe is giving us a similar idea, The core of service and the root of service of Hashem is is um what he's going to teach us. Okay, so let's see what he's going to teach us. Because even though fear is the root of turn away from evil and love is the root of do good, right? There's a verse in Tehillim that says turn away from evil and do good, right? So the turning away from evil, the fear, we know is the root of the negative commandments, the lo sase, like don't do this, don't do that. And love, do good, is the source of the positive commandments, okay? So the Alter Rebbe is saying, okay, we need to bear in mind what is the beginning of divine service and its core and its root. Because yes, we know that fear is the root of this idea of turning away from evil, and mitzvahs and do good is this idea of love is do good, but love is not enough. He's going to tell us, okay? Love is not enough. So love is not enough. I thought love would be enough. No, he says, nevertheless, even though we have these two thrusts, nevertheless, it's not sufficient to awaken the love alone to do good. Okay, so love is not enough. Do we need fear of God? Well, not only do we need fear of God only for not sinning, only for sur merah, from stay away from evil. The Alter Rebbe is going to say, no, that's not the only reason why we need fear of love, right? Remember the mashal about like knocking you over the head, right? Yeah, I could have fear that somebody's going to knock me over the head and I'm going to stay away from getting myself in trouble. But the Alter Rebbe is saying, no, that's not the only reason why we need fear of love. He says, at the very, very least, before anything, one must first, at a minimum, one must first arouse an innate fear which lies hidden in the heart of every Jew. Listen to this. Every single person, every single Jew has a yira mesuteres, an inner, a hidden fear that is inner, deep inner fear, not to rebel against the supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, as has been stated above. So minimally, every Jew has this innate knowing that there is a God to serve. Just like we intuitively know that there's a police, there's a president, and we would behave in front of them, right? Or even if it was a king of flesh and blood, right? Well, all the more so in front of the King of Kings, we would listen. There's just like this inner knowing. And when I was learning this inside the other day, I was thinking, it's so interesting because very often we come across people who say, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but living in Texas, I experienced it a lot, especially in the older generation, where my husband and I will go to a social event, I don't know, like a JCC event or a Shiva or whatever. My husband grew up here, so we know a lot of people in the broader community, let's say, not just in our neighborhood. We know a lot of people, and I write for the local newspaper and whatever, so we bump into a lot of people. And the number of times that people say, particularly mostly to my husband, because he's like very visibly, I mean, everybody knows him too, but when they introduce themselves and, do you know my parents? Da, 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 da. The thing that comes next is, oh, I'm also Jewish, but I'm a bad Jew. I'm a not good Jew, right? I shouldn't use the word bad. And for my husband and I, it's always so painful and so uncomfortable. Like, where is that coming from? Why do you have to say that? Obviously, the answer that we say immediately is, no, don't say such a thing. There is no such thing. But why am I telling you this? Because what does that mean? That means I know deep down in my heart, I have a yira mesuteres, I have an inner fear, an inner knowing that there is someone out there, a creator, that I should do what they say, but I don't do it, right? I know there is such a thing, right? I know inside, and therefore I categorize myself like that, but really it's coming from that place of knowing. So the Alter Rebbe is saying, at a minimum, a person has to have that, right? Where they know that there is a king of the world, that you have awe, that you know that there's an expectation, right? That you're there to serve him. So that this fear should manifest itself in his heart, or at least in his mind. Maybe he can't get to a place where he feels it, but at least on an intellectual level, a person needs to know there is a King of Kings, and I I need to have reverence. I need to serve him, right? It needs to be activated somewhere. So ultimately, yes, we should get to a point where we feel it, right? But at a minimum, on an intellectual level. So this means that in order to arouse within himself this fear, he should at least contemplate in his mind the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, the infinite, and his kingship. So again, going back to bitachon, isn't it true that like we said, that one of the three things that the Shar Bitachon tells us, that, like I said at the beginning of class, that we need to have so solid, because if we don't, it's going to cause trouble, right? When he says, one of the impediments to trust, that's the word that it uses, one of the impediments to trust is not knowing the greatness of Hashem. The Alter Rebbe is saying, at a minimum, a person needs to arouse in their mind, within that, they need to meditate on the greatness of Hashem, right? And he continues, his kingship, which extends to all worlds, both higher and lower, right? And this brings us to this place that when we understand this, that the greater the king's dominion, so to speak, right, the more awe it inspires. Right? So when a person meditates on the fact that, oh my goodness, I am just one part of creation, right? The King of Kings is constantly creating, like we said before. He never stops creating, and look at everything he creates, right? And let him further consider that he fills all worlds, right? He's Memalek Kol Almim. He fills the world, and he animates them with this life force that keeps it existing in creation, right? And he also encompasses all worlds, encompasses all worlds, right? He's Sovev Kol Almim. So not only does he fill the world, but he encompasses all of the world. Whoa, right? That's my creator, right? He also animates them with a life force that transcends the experience that I have and the comprehension that I have here, right? It's beyond, it's so much greater. But he also fills it here. It's both, right? As it is written, do I not fill heaven and earth? And yet, this creator, this king, who is Sovev Kol Almim and Memalek Kol Almim, leaves aside the creatures of the higher worlds and the creatures of the lower worlds, and he uniquely bestows his kingship upon his people Israel in general and upon him in particular. So look at what the Alter Rebbe is telling us. He is this King of Kings. Okay, this is the meditation he's giving us. And yet he comes and he gives extra kingship, right? Extra attention upon who? Upon his people Israel. And it's not just general, like, yes, we're about to approach, we're on the climb to Matan Torah, to receive the Torah, right? It's not just that he's giving us the Torah and he's given us the mitzvahs and that he revealed to us in Mount Sinai, but it's also in particular to me. It's not that he has his eyes upon the Jewish people and his love set on the Jewish people, but on me in particular, says the Alter Rebbe, right? And me being you and I who are learning this, and who the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, I want you to study it every day or say it every day, right? Why? For a man is obligated to say, for my sake, the world was created, right? We know that verse, right? For my sake, the world was created, right? So it's very interesting because that pasuk, Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, there's also a Hasidic interpretation that is He'olam. So that Hashem concealed himself for me so that I should be there to reveal him, right? That's the concealment, meaning I'm there to reveal Hashem. You can't pass the buck. You can't resign your responsibility. You can't pass the buck. It's you. Hashem needs you. But remember, we're going from a place of the King of Kings, who creates the world, who enlivens the world, who encompasses all worlds, right? And yet he also has particular attention towards me, right? and says, you matter to the point that I need to internalize for me, the world was created, or that for me, he concealed himself for me to reveal him, right? Bishvili nivra ha'olam. And he, for his part, meaning us, we, on our part, we accept his kingship upon himself, that he be king over him, to serve him and do his will in all kinds of servile work, meaning serve Hashem, accept the yoke of heaven. So we accept his kingship. He's the king, and we accept his kingship, which we do every Rosh Hashanah, right? That's exactly what happens. We say, you know what? I'm crowning the king, right? And again, we go back to this idea from the Shar Bitachon that he tells us, even in the introduction, he already told us, it has to be like a servant to his master, right? I'm here to serve my master. And like I told you before, told us right at the beginning, you need reliance in order to be a servant, in order to serve Hashem. What is serving Hashem? Is accepting the yoke of heaven, accepting the kingship of the king. Okay? So, and then he says, he gives us a verse, a beautiful verse that we're about to unpack. He says, and this is one of the 12 verses that the Rebbe asks that children should memorize and say every day. So I always ask my son, he walks to school, and I always say, as I close the gate, I say, Menachem, say the 12 Pesukim, right? Yes, Mami, right? So this is one of the verses. And the verse is, Vehine Hashem nitzav alav, Umalo kol haaretz kevodo, umavis alav, ubochen klayos valev im afto karaui. And behold, Hashem stands over him, right? Hashem stands over me. And the whole world is full only with his glory, God's glory. So Hashem, vehine, Hashem stands over me. And the whole world is filled only with his glory. And not only is the world is filled with his glory, and he's omnipresent and he sees everything, but moreover, he gazes upon a person, Mavit Alaf, he gazes, he scrutinizes in him in particular, and he searches in his reins and heart, in his innermost thoughts and emotions, to see if he is serving him, the king, as it's fitting, right? Hashem is interested in every detail of my life. Therefore, he must serve in his presence with awe and fear, not like one merely located in the king's domain, but like one standing before the king. If you were to stand before the king, right? If you were standing before, God forbid, the Lahavdil, the president, or the judge in court, or whatever, right? You would have some awe or reverence. So he must serve in his presence with this awe and fear, like he's standing before the King of Kings, right? You would be blown away. You would be so overwhelmed and overtaken by, well, guess what? You're constantly standing in front of the King of Kings, constantly. And that's where this portion of Tanya ends. I mean, it continues, the chapter continues, but this portion of chapter 41 is what the Lubavitcher Rebbe, up until this, exactly where it says, standing before the king, up until here, is what the Lubavitcher Rebbe wanted people to really meditate upon and internalize, okay? So now let's break it apart a little bit and talk about what the Rebbe said and how he connected it to different ideas. So the Rebbe points out that the Alter Rebbe specifically cites the words from the Mishnah yeah, he takes the words of the Mishnah that we said here. Where did we say it? Oh, yes. That bishbili nivra ha'olam, right? That the person was created, the world was created for my sake. So the Alter Rebbe puts it here in this place, in the Tanya. Why? To teach us that important point that a person could think, okay, you know what? The world was created so that the Jewish people do the work that they need to do. That's beautiful. But you know what? There are so many Jews. There's other people who can do the work that needs to be done. There's other people who can reveal Hashem in the world. There's other people who can make a dira bitachtonim, right? A dwelling place for Hashem in this world. Is it really so important for me to do what I have to do at this very moment? And the question is in the verse itself, Bishbili nivra ha'olam, right? The world was created for me. So the Alter Rebbe addresses this question, this doubt of the person, this faulty thinking by quoting the Mishnah. And saying that the fact that a person is supposed to see the world as having been created for his own sake, is also supported by the fact that Adam was created as one, right? If we go back to Bereshis, right, to the beginning of the Torah, we know that that Adam was created, right? The first man was created alone. He was first created as one. Adam Arisha knew that there was no one else in the world he could rely on to get his job done, right? That's it, which brings us back to us and our reliance, right? Why are we relying on everybody else, right? We had the buck stops with us. We have to do what we need to do. But there's another point but we have us and Hashem. That's it, okay? The buck stopped with him. Whatever Adam needed to do, he needed to do. He needed to achieve it. Every person, every Jewish person needs to understand that his service is just as important as though you were the only one. You were that Adam who was created, the only man that Hashem created at that moment. Okay. There is no one else who can do what he needs to do. And what he does is going to have an effect in the world in its entirety, right? We're talking about cosmic implications. Eileen, you have a question? Let's pause. This is here. Wow.
And so why do I mention this? Because each of us is something in that engine, and Hashem created that engine, and right? And so each of
100%.
us, even if we're something that we don't feel like we're so special, whatever, like even the lowliest of the nuts and bolts is absolutely necessary. Every single Jew is necessary in order to, okay. So
yeah, 100%. 100. I love that. 100%. I love that. I'm gonna repeat it and quote you now all the time that I remember. I love that. Okay. And to your point, if at any moment we miss the opportunity and we fail to fulfill our service and our mission, right? Then it's going to have an implication, unfortunately, a negative implication, right? On all of the worlds, because like you said, it has an impact. It's a cosmic impact, right? So, but on the other hand, if we seize the opportunity and do a good deed, then we can actually transform the entire world for good, because it's all dependent on each and every one of us. It's all on like you said it best. Okay. So basically Hashem needs us. Okay. So we recognize this, like I said before, Vehine Hashem Nitzav Alav is one of the 12 verses, the 12 Pesukim that the Rebbe asked that children would learn by heart, which has always found it so beautiful, because again, what an empowering, beautiful message for children to learn from an early age, right? And the Rebbe obviously noted that this was so fundamental for a person to know that he included it in the 12 verses that they should know, right? And the Rebbe pointed out that a child needs to know Hashem Nitzav Alav. He stands before you. He's there. It's real. It's real, and your relationship with him is real, and it matters to him. Every detail of your existence and your participation in his created world matters to him, right? So the child needs to know this, right? That Hashem stands upon his or her service, that Hashem's kingship over the world is dependent upon whether we, the Jewish people, do our job, right? Every single bolt matters. It has an impact. So the Alter Rebbe takes this a step further, and he says that in order for Hashem's kingship to be solid in the world, one might think, well, it's enough if we accept his kingship by saying, for example, Shema Israel with deep conviction and feeling, right? By proclaiming his sovereignty through the shofar blowing on Rosh Hashanah. Those are all very good things. Or by rejoicing on Simchas Torah. Those are all great. But the Alter Rebbe here says, no. In order to really have Hashem Nitzav Alav, Hashem standing before you, we have to realize that Hashem is Be'ochen Klayos Valev Im Avdo Karaui, that he constantly inspects our service, everything, because it matters, right? He is constantly watching over us to ensure that we are succeeding, that we're doing it correctly at every single moment of every single day. We have to be on top of our game, right? It's the buck stops with us, right? We have to be on top of our game, and we have to be sure to be in that relationship in the correct way. Hashem's sovereignty over the entire world is actually in our hands, because if we miss the opportunity, we're altering the entire plan of his kingship, of creation. Okay, so there's a story that let me see, there's a story that Rabbi Yitzhak Meir Gurari says that the Rebbe always emphasized, he says that he always told him many times, and other people who went to have private audiences emphasize how important it would be to know Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41. And he said it, and he said that it was a way to deal with melancholy, to him specifically, because remembering that Hashem is always with you is a sure way to feel happiness. So again, we go back to the same idea, right? When we remember that Hashem is always with us, and we remember the qualities of the king, and that the king is attentive, he cares, and he's close to me, and he's responsible, he has all sovereignty and for me and for everything, right? All these things, of course, we're going to feel so reliant and dependent on him and so happy, right? Because we don't need anything else. And then he said, well, he continues, whatever. I'm going to skip this part. Okay, I'm going to skip this part, and then I'm going to give a little bit of pieces here that they say, and then we'll answer questions, and we can get into a little bit more of a discussion that the Rebbe said. And these are going to be pieces of letters where the Rebbe gave advice of learning this part of Perek Mem Aleph, and you'll see how some of it resonates or not resonates, but is in sync with bitachon and simcha and everything that bitachon implies. So, okay, so the Rebbe says, you write in your letter that contemplation upon the first part of Tanya, Perek Mem Aleph, from the beginning until the word Hamelech, which is what we just learned, is not applicable to you in your current standing. Do not be affected by these persuasions of the Yetzer Hara. Instead, review the text in your mind multiple times, and the Yetzer Hara's arguments will be silenced automatically. So I'm telling you this because it reminds me of how constantly we're reviewing all these concepts, right? Because the more we have them in our mind, the easier it's going to be to push out the negative, voice. It's search engine optimization, like we've said here so many times, right? The more this is what we have in our mind, Hashem and Hashem's qualities and Hashem's love for us and how Hashem needs me and he's responsible for me and how I'm here to serve him and do good in the world, the more I could push away all the other stuff that wants to that might come in but wants to stay, and I could say, okay, bye-bye, I have things to do, right? So the Rebbe says to somebody else, study by heart the first section of Perek Mem Aleph. If you'll contemplate upon the fact that Hashem is standing upon you, and he's the essence of goodness, and he has promised that when one comes to purify himself, he is assisted from on high, and that when a person sanctifies himself a bit from below, heaven will sanctify him even more. Your worries will certainly diminish gradually until they go away completely. Because at the end of the day, if I know, look, Hashem, I'm trying, I'm doing for you, right? And we're honest, right? If we have to go back to what are the 5 conditions for bitachon to be real bitachon. Number 1, I have to know that God is the cause of all causes. Number 2, it has to be exclusive. It can't be on anybody else. So if I'm actually with exclusivity, I'm coming into this relationship, it's exclusive. Number 3, it has to be sincere. I have to actually mean it, right? So then I'm going to not have any worries because I know that Hashem is going to be helping me along the way. So why should I be worried? Should I be worried? There's nothing to be worried about. You ask for advice about guarding your speech and strengthening your bitachon. There is one solution to both of these problems. So he wants to get rid of a negative trait. He doesn't want to use his words negatively, okay? And he also wants to strengthen his bitachon. And didn't we say last class that all negative character traits at the end of the day stem from what? From a lack of reliance of Hashem, right? If I'm not relying on Hashem, then what this guy does bothers me so much that I have to talk about them. Then also, I don't feel so secure in who I am vis-a-vis my creator that I have to put other people down, right? If I'm a jealous person, right? It's because I don't rely on Hashem that he's the only one who's providing for me. Therefore, I don't have to look at what anybody else has. Like all of these things, melancholy or arrogance, all of these things, where do they come from? From lack of bitachon. So what does the Rebbe say? There's one solution to both of these problems, to the problem of I need to strengthen my bitachon and the problem that I need to deal with the fact that I need to be better at my speech, guarding my speech. There's one solution. Contemplate the fact that Hashem is standing above you, right? That's exactly Perek Mem Aleph. Doing what? Examining your heart and insights, as explained in the Holy Tanya, Perek Mem Aleph. It would be worthwhile to know the section by heart from the beginning of the chapter until the word Hamelech, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Hold on, I'm looking. I didn't highlight this. I'm gonna give you another one. Look at this. In response to your letter dated the 10th of Iyar, in which you asked for a spiritual rectification for certain transgressions, as well as advice on how to better friend of this issue in the future, you also describe being overcome with hopelessness and so on. Various sources explain that hopelessness is one of the tactics of the Yetzer Hara, which he uses to entrap the person by explaining that since you're not going to have the ability to overcome the Yetzer Hara anyway, then therefore there's no purpose in even trying. Why are you going to fight about him, right? That's a classic tactic of an old trick of the Yetzer Hara. Obviously, this argument is heresy, contrary to our belief in Hashem, because the Rebbe says here, Hashem creates the entire world, including humans. No place is devoid of his presence. And he told us in his holy Torah, I created the Yetzer Hara and I created the Torah as its antidote. So yes, there's a Yetzer Hara, but it's not true that you can't beat it. But again, fill yourself with good things and light, and then you'll be able to just push, it'll go away. It would be appropriate for you to learn by heart from the beginning of Perek Mem Aleph till the word Hamelech, and likewise you have your tefillin check. So the idea is, yeah, of course, let's learn something good. Let's focus on what you need to be doing here and who are you serving, right? Let's focus on that fear of Hashem that leads you to, wow, Hashem cares. Hashem loves me. I'm going to do, right? It's that sun that's illuminating. I'm like, oh, I'm going to take off the coat. I'm not going to focus on my negative qualities. I'm just going for the gold here. I have too much to do for my creator. He's like standing in front of me and he's supervising everything. I'm ready to serve, right? Okay, another one. I have a few more letters and then we'll take questions. Regarding what you write about anger and arrogance, so two other negative traits. As is the case of every area of life, the way to fix this is by taking one step at a time. The first step is to refrain from expressing your feelings of anger or arrogance in words, right? So don't come to the point of materializing it by acting on it, right? Speech is already at the level of action, which will in turn minimize the expression of the feeling as a whole. We all know that we can feel something, but if we start acting on it, like it just compounds it, right? As it's already apparent. At the same time, when the feelings of anger or arrogance flare up, contemplate the content of the beginning of Tanya Perek Mem Aleph. You should be well versed in it, and best would be if you memorized it by heart, right? He's telling the person, the minute you start being off kilter, right, and your bitachon is gone, yeah, you're not relying on Hashem, because if you're about to you're getting angry or you're feeling boastful, it's like you forgot Hashem, right? Because you can't get angry if the minute something happens, you're, Hashem, you got this. Like, I know this is coming from you. Wait, what's the lesson here? Let me internalize what Hashem, what do you want me to get out of this, right? There's no place for arrogance, or there's no place for a person who has Hashem in his mind and constant, right, to become boastful, because I'm just here to serve Hashem. Hashem, what do you need me for, right? So if the Rebbe says, if you feel like you're in that place of either arrogance or anger, immediately you need to go to Perek Mem Aleph. You need to remember that Hashem, the King of Kings, who fills the world and encompasses the world, is standing in front of you, that the world was created for you, that he's standing in front of you, supervising everything that you're doing, right? Because it matters. All right, so you write that at times you become frightened and that you imagine having heart problems. In my opinion, both of these things are products of your imagination. You should therefore check your tefillin and the mezuzahs of your dwelling, at least the one on your room, and check the tzitzis on your talis katan daily. Be strong in your bitachon in Hashem, who watches over every single person with individual providence, which means individual supervision, and he stands upon you. Again, the same words from the Tanya. Best would be if you study by heart from the beginning of Perek Mem Aleph, blah, 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 until Hamelech, okay? So again, Be strong in your bitachon. And in order to help your bitachon, go into that parak, know it, memorize it, have it in your mind. That's going to bring you to a place of bitachon, self-control. You write that you're lacking in the area of moach shalit alalev, having the mind control, that the mind rules the heart, mind rules the emotions. So you say that you're lacking on it, which causes you to become alarmed at any given situation, big or small, right? So you're not having the self-control, and you become a very emotional person right away, instead of like having that mental control. So what does the Rebbe advise this person? Again, it would be appropriate for you to engrave in your memory the words of Parak Mem Aleph, etc. And when you feel your emotions overtaking you, think about these words in your mind or even say them orally. But we go back to the same idea, because what is bitachon? Bitachon is a feeling that a person feels when they know that the one in whom they trust is going to do good for them and is going to follow through and go above and beyond. So when a person knows who he's trusting, and that the one who's trusting is the one that has all those qualities, that he's going to do good for them and he will go above and beyond. Feels tranquil, right? That's the definition of trust, that feeling of peace, of serenity. So if a person is struggling to the point that he gets emotional, he gets scared, he gets panicked, he gets worried all the time, right? He doesn't have the mind control to know, no, but I have Hashem. I don't have to be in a frenzy. I don't have to be a basket case. It doesn't matter what the client said. It doesn't matter what the lawyer said. I have Hashem. Everything is cool. I'm cool and collected. I have Hashem, right? If you're lacking there, go to Parak Mem Aleph, go read it, go no. Again, go back to the principles that are right there that are telling Hashem, the King of Kings. I'm going to repeat it again. Who encompasses the world, who surrounds the world, who enlivens the world. He's standing right before you, right? The world was created for you. He's standing right before you. He supervises you. What you do matters. Okay, that's like a just free translation over there. Okay, so in response to your letter in which you write about the problem of laziness, another negative trait, and you ask, what's the solution? Well, what's the solution? The Rebbe says, study the beginning of Tanya, Perek Mem Aleph, until Hamelech, know it by heart, and from time to time review it orally or at least in your mind. Contemplating even the most basic translation of these words will be enough to get rid of the laziness. Because of course, I'm not going to be lazy if I know the King of Kings needs me, right? That fear, that awe is going to move me to action, right? In the morning when we say Modeani, right? We say Modeani and we internalize what we're saying. We're like, oh my goodness, the King of Kings just gave me back my soul and he has faith in me. Let's get to work. I have what to do here. So there's no sluggishness if we understand these concepts, right? Joy. You write in your letter at length about your personal situation that you're not always joyful. This issue is discussed in longer and shorter segments of the Alter Rebbe's Tanya, especially Parak 33. You can add to this simcha sentiment explained in chapter 33 by the reflections stated in the Holy Tanya, beginning of Parak Mem Aleph, how the Supreme King of Kings, Hashem, places aside all the higher and lower realms and takes interest only in you, in each and every Jew, right? Remember at the beginning we said that the Hashem who encompasses, who creates the world and enlivens the world and encompasses the world, he leaves all of that aside and he puts his gaze, he's our attention in his kingship on Israel, and not just Israel in general, but in particular, each and every Jew, and how the whole world is filled with his presence, etc., etc. And wherever Hashem is, there is joy. This contemplation will bolster the joy within a person. And how can a person achieve concentration and intention during prayer? The Rebbe says, by contemplating before prayer, at least for a few minutes, who you are about to pray to, right? We have to, again, we started this idea because we were learning from Rabbi Satan's book that we have to know Yud Kei Vav Kei. We have to know who we're in a relationship with. And if we know who we're in a relationship with, then we can address him. Then we can properly go and say thank you. And then we can properly go and ask, right? It would be appropriate to study by heart from the beginning of Tanya Perek Mem Aleph until the word Hamelech. And then the last thing is, the Rebbe writes in a letter, greeting and blessing, I received your letter of the 5th of Adar Aleph with regard to the inclination towards a feeling of sadness A good remedy for it is to have it firmly engraved on your mind that God, the creator of the world, watches over everyone individually, and being the essence of goodness, right? God is the essence of goodness. There is therefore no room for sadness or worry. And as has been explained at length in various parts of the Tanya, it would be especially good for you to learn by heart from the beginning of chapter 41, second line. Whenever you feel sad or depressed, you should review that section in your mind or recite it orally to dispel the unwelcome feeling. All right, so that is, let's go into the chat box. And if you want to unmute yourself, Cynthia says something so beautiful here with emoji. I accept the King of the universe. I'm a Noahide and hope to be part of the righteous people of Hashem. Beautiful. We can't wait. Is there any part of the Tanya which is addressed to Noahides or righteous people amid the nation? So, Cynthia, the answer to your question is the Shar HaYichud Ve'emunah, okay, the beginning of Tanya, but not of the 52 chapters of Likutei Amarim, but specifically the Sefer that is part of Tanya, but it's like a separate part. It's called Shar HaYichud Ve'emunah, the gate of unity and faith, that is particularly relevant for Noahide. So what I would say is that focus your energy on learning in depth Shar Yichud Ve'emunah, which we mentioned actually last week, as we were talking about the concept of continuous creation, and we were talking about the concept of Hashem being the only independent existence because creation is dependent on Hashem. All of that are the core, all of that is in Shar Yichud Ve'emunah, and this is the fundamental principles that everybody needs to know, but it's particularly relevant. So, oh, you're very welcome. Okay, so my question is, did we see how Hasidus is actually teaching us the same thing that we're learning and that we're trying to accomplish? Did we see the connection here? I hope so, because I saw it. Yes? Okay, good. Okay, good. Any other incident stories? Yes.
What I'm getting out of this is that we need to be in every moment. And
I am in the presence of Hashem. And who's Hashem? The King of Kings. And yet he cares about me. Whoa. If I have that mindfulness, if I have that meditation internalized, wherever I go, whatever situation I encounter, I am going to be fine. I'm going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Sherry? Do you have a story for us? You always have a good story for us. No.
Till today, I haven't find the keys. I don't have my keys.
When you're cleaning for Pesach next year, it'll show up.
So
funny. It'll show up, and then you can, since you're gonna anyway take care of it, you'll use that key to put in your, what's it called, in the challah. You'll put it in the shishol challah next year. You know, the challah where we hide the key. You know, this Shabbos, Friday night, I instead of shaping the last Friday night, instead of shaping the challah and the whole shape of the key, I just hide a key. I wrap it in foil and I hide it in the dough. Because then your challah is actually fluffy. Once you start making those funny shapes, I'm sorry, but then you don't get like that nice fluffy piece of challah. So I'm like, I'm not making the funny shapes. I'm making challah the proper way. So, but I was like very, very busy on Friday, and I paid zero attention to which of the however many challahs came out of the batch, 8 or whatever it was, where it was. So then after they came out of the oven, my daughter says, okay, so which one is it? I said, oh my gosh, Chaya, I have no idea. I have no idea that went on this tray or the ones that went on that tray. So I think it's the ones on this tray. So, you know, we weren't going to use 8 challahs. So it's like, which 4 challahs are we going to use? 4 or 5, whatever, this Shabbos. So, okay, maybe we don't find it tonight, maybe tomorrow night. Anyway, my husband comes from shul, and I pick whatever challahs I pick to leave in the oven, and I thought, okay, so it's gonna be. But it turns out that the one, so we start making kiddush on whatever it is, and he asks which one, and I said, I have no idea, but do that one. And literally, and then he was cutting it. It was actually so well hidden that I couldn't tell from the outside, so I really had no idea. So we found the key, which we thought was really cool, even though because usually I know which one it is. But we found the key. So you reminded me of the story that we found the key. May everybody found the keys to Parnassa and to health and to prosperity and to all the good things. To all the good things. Okay, ladies, have a good Shabbos. I will see you next week. Take care.
Thanks.